to the Kyle and Jim Fantasy Football Podcast Extraordinaire. I'm Jim, and over here is Kyle, my other host. How you doing, Kyle?
I'm good. Feeling refreshed. Just got back from vacation earlier today. Spent a few days down in Arkansas visiting my sister. Didn't get to watch as much football as I wanted this week, but that's okay. We went over some highlights. We got enough to talk about regardless. How you doing?
Doing pretty good. We had an eventful week. Our water heater went out on Thursday. Finally replaced that on Sunday. Then, as we were talking before the podcast, my fridge door fell off yesterday. Thankfully, we bought a new fridge the day before, or like 2 weeks ago, and it got shipped today. So I put that in. So we're all good. Everything's fixed and all, but it's been a hectic week.
Oh, nice. Did you put the water heater in yourself?
Sky helped me. He pretty much did most of it. I didn't really know what to do. I followed along, and plumbing's not too hard actually. I think I could figure it out, but I did need someone to show me.
Yeah, is it gas or is it electric one?
It's gas.
Okay, yeah.
The gas is what's
Suppose you got to be a little careful with the gas lines and the venting and stuff.
Yeah.
We did one a while back, and then I was talking to a guy at work. He's like, blah blah, you can't do that yourself. You have to have a licensed plumber come and do it. I was like, well, too late now. I think it's mostly because of the carbon monoxide. Like if you fuck up the venting, you know, you can get carbon monoxide poisoning. But we've got a sensor down there, so I'm not concerned about it. It would have gone off if we fucked it up.
Had a good life.
Exactly. Alrighty. On that note, let's get into it. We'll start with the fab bet, like we always do. We bet on if Lee could get off the schneid this week, and he did. He got his first win. It came at the expense of yours truly. Bummer for me, but congrats to Lee. You got that one in your win column now. So Lee, Ashley, Scooter, Jackie, and Vicky, you all had it correct, and you have an extra $5 in your account now. Just gonna note so far the majority has been wrong on every single one of these bets, so we'll see if that changes with next week's. This one, well, it's not gonna change with this one because this one's kind of harder. It's not gonna be a 50-50 shot. I'm gonna go with who's gonna be the highest scoring quarterback this week. I'll throw it in the group chat tomorrow for everyone that's not listening.
It's a good one. The only problem is what happens if no one gets the highest score? Should we pick whoever got the highest quarterback remaining?
No, I'm just asking quarterback. So it doesn't have to be a rostered quarterback. You said to throw me like if you think it's Goff, you say Goff.
Let's say no one picks Goff. Goff is the number one quarterback that week. Does it go to the next person, whoever the next closest is, or do you not want to give anyone points?
Nah, no one gets it if they get. Nah, you got to get it.
All right, 100%.
Nobody might get any points this week, but
all right, sounds good to me.
That's what we did the first week when Ashley had the lowest score. No one guessed her, so no one got money.
Okay.
So there could be no winners this week, but hopefully someone gets it. That's it for the fab. We'll jump straight into the NFL highlights as the next section. Oh, what do we got first here? Oh yeah, this one we're gonna go over these first. They weren't great games, but they relate to our bet from last week. So the shit shows of the week. We were betting on the Broncos versus the Raiders. This one actually wound up being surprisingly high scoring. The Broncos looked legitimate for the first time all season on offense, anyways. They wound up winning with 34-18, total of 52 points scored. So it was way over the line. On the flip side of that, we had the Dolphins versus the Patriots, who I had as the lowest scoring game of the week. This was actually what we were expecting when we did this bet. Extremely low scoring. Dolphins took the victory with a whopping 15 points. Patriots only had 10. Only 25 scored total, well under the line of 35. So that's the first matches. That's the bet. Crack that, Malort.
Yeah.
Well, I guess not crack it.
Yeah, it's already been cracked, but I feel like I took the riskier pick. I just thought, like I said, Tyreek Hill, maybe Waddle. I thought they were like the best players amongst all the offenses. So I was just kind of hoping maybe they would get off of their schneid and then, have that one big play that would set it. But instead, we got to see Bo Nix's first real good game, I think.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that was the difference, is that he finally put some drives together. I thought the better defenses were the Broncos and Raiders. So that was part of it too. I was like, okay, they're a little bit better defenses. They're going to keep the game lower scoring, but overall, I think they're just better teams. Dolphins are obviously terrible, though, too. And the Patriots are so dysfunctional that it's crazy what happened in 1 year after losing Belichick.
Right.
But here we go. Here's my Malort. You think I'm losing on purpose because I love it so much.
Yeah, I can tell by
Oh,
your face. You love that
but I
thing.
I don't like it. I mean, I don't really take shots anymore. I haven't really been drinking in a couple years. So shots in general are just, oh, they're hard for me to take. Like if you gave me like whiskey or something, I would probably wouldn't even like it anymore. Whew,
And anything will taste good after getting used to those.
right. I guess yeah. They'll make anything taste good.
Um, yeah, your thoughts. I agreed. I mean, I thought the Broncos had the best defense. I really thought that was going to be a very low scoring game. I was shocked that their offense looked that good because they hadn't shown any sign of that so far this year. So that was an
The
interesting
Raiders
one.
are getting sick and tired of Antonio Pierce's shtick. You know, I think they kind of brought him in to be the Dan Campbell type coach, which is funny that the Lions are getting copied now. You know, he had a pretty good run as the interim head coach last year, and I think he got the players motivated, but he never really had the same tenure as an assistant coach as Campbell had. So he didn't get to learn under the wings of someone as much, you know. He just kind of I think
Sure.
he came in for like 2 years as a coach and they made him a head coach. I think there's just a lot for that guy to learn. Seems like he's starting to lose the team with some of his comments. So I think the Raiders are going to be one of those teams we're going to see they're just going to probably implode within the next couple of weeks.
He's definitely losing Devontae Adams. Sounds like he's the issue and he's the reason he's probably getting traded. And
Yeah,
that's a coaching thing if you can't control players like that.
I think it goes beyond him though. I mean, like that was when Carr got traded. I think he's been bitter since that moment. So I'll give Pierce the benefit of the doubt on that one. I think Adams is a lost cause for him by the time he took over the team. But regardless, you know, maybe find a way to get him to buy in, and he didn't. So
Yeah,
is that showing that he is incompetent? I don't know. Is it an Adams thing? Maybe.
we'll see. I'm curious where Adams winds up. I'm curious if it
It's
happens this
pretty.
week yet.
There's a lot of reports that are saying the Jets are going to
They
have him the
seem
next 2 days. Yeah,
they seem
and
to be the favorite by a ton.
I mean it makes sense.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to fix the Jets' problem, but
Yeah, I think they have an Aaron Rodgers
whatever.
problem.
Yeah, I do too. But I mean, those guys do have a history. Like they can just look at each other on the line and be like, "Oh, we both see the same coverage. We know what to do."
It makes sense for them. Yeah, I think they do need to do it. Like you've already bet on Rodgers. You just fired Saleh, the head coach,
That too.
because he didn't look like he got along with Rodgers. I don't know if you saw that one video of him like trying to give Rodgers a hug after they won that one game.
Yeah,
And Rodgers just like awkwardly pushes him away. You could tell from that point right there was something going on between those two. And I think Rodgers just won out. I think the owner sided with the quarterback and took him out. And there was this before we got on here. I saw a rumor, not even a rumor. They came out and said that he told Nathaniel Hackett that he's no longer calling plays, and he got fired a couple hours later. So they're thinking because of that, he got fired, which would make sense that Rodgers, you know, his buddy, he doesn't want to lose play calling duties, and they got rid of him. But that's just hearsay right now.
true. But it seems like that organization gave Rodgers way too much power right off the bat, and it bit him in the foot real fast because they couldn't seem to wrangle it back. I feel bad for Salah. I feel like he didn't get a legitimate shot.
So I was going to get another head coaching job, I think. Maybe not right away. He might go back and be defense coordinator somewhere and have some success and then get another shot, but he deserves it. I don't think that was a good situation for him. The whole Rodgers fiasco was
The trade
abysmal.
was bad. It's just, you start out on the back foot, and then he's injured, so you don't even get the thing you traded for, even though you
Right.
gave up a bunch. You had to take the salary with you, so you're paying him a ton, so you can't sign other players to like make sure your defense stays good. I'm not saying Salah's a great coach, but I feel like he did get the short end of the stick there and didn't get a full shot at the job.
Yeah, I agree.
Anyways, enough of talk about that. A couple other highlights from the NFL. We got the Texans beat the Bills. The Bills continue their struggle. Another poor performance by Josh Allen this week. I didn't see this game, but I was reading about it. It sounded like Josh Allen got knocked out cold during this game. Like he fell, his arms were limp. What I read is he got pulled onto the side. They gave him smelling salts and threw him back into the game. That's wild to me. I don't know how you could have possibly passed concussion protocol if you were knocked unconscious in a game.
Yeah, that was. I mean, I didn't see it live. I've heard the same thing and watched the same things you have. The thing about it is he had to get cleared by the doctors. I know there are a lot of people are going after the Bills coaching staff, but they're told by the doctors if he can play or not. They don't make medical decisions. They just said, okay, he's ready to play, throw him in there. But I think this just comes back to you got to protect these players. They're going to want to play, and especially they got their bell rung. They don't know the consequences of what just happened to them. Like
Hmm.
I think the NFL just needs to start pulling these guys out, but there's too much money involved, and it was very obvious from what I've been reading that Josh Allen was completely out of it after he came back in. They said he just did not look right. He was not reading coverages properly. It sounded like it was a complete mess, and everyone thinks it's due to a concussion. So it's gonna be interesting to see how this week plays out. I haven't heard anything yet, but sometimes you'll hear like, "Oh yeah, so and so had a concussion." It's like, "Yep, we kind of saw."
I don't even know how they can come out and say that after the fact. Like we put him back into the game, and then 2 days later, like, oh yeah, he's in concussion protocol now.
It's
It's like, well, how the fuck
happened
did he get back into the
even with
game?
the protocol. They've had situations. I think Tua was one of them that got put back in a game when they're like, "Oh yeah, he got concussed. Whoops."
Maybe they need to change that protocol a little bit during in-game stuff.
I
If
wouldn't be
you're out cold on the
surprised.
field, it should just be that's it. You're done for the day.
Right? If your arms go limp, you can't come back in. If
Yeah,
you lose your ability to move your arms, like you got knocked out, okay? Like I don't care if it's 1 minute, 10 seconds. If your arms go limp, you're done. Like protect these guys.
from themselves.
Yeah,
Because like you said, they're always going to want to go back in. 100%
exactly.
guaranteed. Next matchup I got here, we had the Jaguars. They got off the losing train, finally secured their first win of the season against the Colts. Trevor Lawrence had his first good game all season, and his first good game in a very long time. Promising for them. I'm still not quite sure I believe in them, but it was good to see.
This is actually the game I chose to watch because I had
Oh,
multiple players on both teams. So I'm like,
yeah, I was
I'm
going
gonna
to get
throw
to
that
that
one up.
later.
And I thought it was gonna be a fun game because both teams are struggling. Both teams have solid offensive skill position players. Maybe a question mark at the Colts quarterback, but Flacco's good enough to get the most out of players, I think. And then Trevor Lawrence, even though he's been on a bad stretch, I believe in him overall. I think he's a solid player. So I was excited to watch it. It was a crazy game, very high scoring. Players
Yeah,
were just making plays left and right on offense for both teams. Defenses really didn't show up at all.
you get those weeks.
Right. And I think it was a good game for Trevor Lawrence to kind of get back on, you know, the horse or whatever. I don't know. I'm not good at analogies here, but
Get
for
get some
Trevor Lawrence,
confidence.
right. He definitely showed it. He seemed very decisive. I haven't watched any of his games earlier this year, but when I have seen him struggle, it seems like he gets like he doubts himself. Here he was fired on all cylinders. He was trying to hit guys deep. He was hitting before they would break out of their routes. He just seemed like he was playing within the offense, and it looked really good. Colts, you got Flacco. He kind of seems like he stabilizes the offense a little bit. He gets most out of those skill position players where Anthony Richardson doesn't. But again, the defenses were just so bad. It was just going to be one of those situations whoever had the ball last wins, and Jaguars were fortunate enough to have the ball last.
Yeah, Lawrence was good. He did throw a pick, but he threw for 371 yards and 2 touchdowns. It was a good looking game from him. It was a good change of pace. Last matchup I have that's non-divisional. I had the Cardinals beating the Niners in their division matchup. Niners do not look like they want to go back to the Super Bowl this season. I know there's the term the Super Bowl hangover. Losing teams from the Super Bowl get this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's what's going on there or if McCaffrey was literally just carrying that team last year because they look different this year and not in a good way.
There's a couple things I believe going on. Early on, obviously they had a lot of injuries. They lost both their starting receivers. We just watched Josh Allen have some bad games because he doesn't have receivers that can get open. You watched Jalen Hurts struggle without his receivers. It doesn't seem like they're giving Purdy the same excuse, which I don't understand. He doesn't have his two top receivers for a couple games. He doesn't have the best running back in the world on his team for the whole season. So they are struggling a little bit, but this game entirely was not due to the players. I mean, they lost their kicker, which really hurt. They couldn't kick field goals, and they had one really bad fumble in the red zone. There should have been no reason the Cardinals won this game. Like, I think it was like 2010. There wasn't hardly any time left. I thought it was a wrap. I had the Niners defense. I wasn't even paying attention to it anymore. And all of a sudden, I'm like, wait, Cardinals are about to kick a field goal to win the game. And it was out of nowhere. when I watched and what I was reading is, yeah, the Niners they've imploded and then lost a game they shouldn't have lost. They had the Cardinals dead to right, and that's just what some teams do it. But this is the second time they've done it
Hmm.
and this year. And I know one of the other problem is they are not doing well in the red zone. And that is where I think they're missing McCaffrey. I think Jordan Mason's a
Big
really
time.
good between the 20s runner, but it seems like whenever they get in the red zone, he's just not the type of guy they can use to get the ball over the goal line. Maybe they need more of like a plotter type running back, just a guy who's 230 pounds, who's just going to take it north and south, not going to dance around. But that doesn't really fit their running scheme. They use like a zone
Hmm.
blocking running scheme. So like they want these guys to be agile because they have to cut quick in the middle of a hole to try to hit the hole. And that does lead to a certain type of running back. And you do have guys like McCaffrey in the league who are amazing goal line backs with that ability, but most of the like end guys are really not that good at it. And I think that's where Mason's really starting to struggle. Their whole team's struggling because of the red zone inefficiency, and it's starting to cost them games.
Yeah, like I said, this one was divisional too, but that could come back to haunt them later on.
I do have one thing to say. Did you see the Kyler Murray touchdown?
No.
Oh my god, you should watch that after we're done with the podcast.
Oh,
So there's a run. They're on like their 40, so they have like 60 yards to go. I think it's like a 60-yard run. And it was pretty clear from the start after he made one juke, he was probably gone. But there was still a defender in front of him that was closing, maybe not closing in on him, but like you could think like, okay, this guy could catch him. There's two guys near trailing him. So maybe if they're fast enough, they catch him on the Niners 45. So he's got maybe like 15 yards running so far. He already puts his hand up in the air because he's got a touchdown, and he's got guys like right next to him, and he's just gone. He just Babe Ruth that shit for a touchdown. That was one of the cooler highlights of the week, and it was like the first drive for the Cardinals. So do yourself a favor and watch that one. It was a good.
just watched it.
Play.
Yeah,
Oh,
that
yeah.
was good.
Okay. Yeah, it's just so awesome. And
Yeah.
he's so tiny. I forget what people said about him. There's all these comments how he runs like an angry something, but he has like such short strides and his legs move so fast. He just doesn't look natural running.
Yeah.
It's hilarious. And then with the whole arm up in the air at the 45, it's great.
Holds the ball weird too while he's running, but
Everything
whatever.
it just looks
It
awkward
works.
as shit, but it
Yeah.
works. Yeah, he's incredibly athletic and he is very fast. Once he hit that past the line of scrimmage, he knew he was
Yeah, he
gone.
doesn't. Yeah,
just pulls away
watching
from
him
the
run, I was
ball
like,
and
he
catches.
doesn't look like he should be outrunning anybody there, but he is. No one catch
Just
up
look at
to
his
him.
legs. They're just moving so
Funny.
much faster than everyone
Yeah.
else's. Like it's just crazy to watch him. I'll have to find some of the comments for you about like what people call him in Reddit. It's so funny. There's one they always say. I can't think of it right now, but I'll make sure for next podcast or after the podcast, I'll get that for you because it's a good nickname for him.
Next time he has a big game, we'll bring him up. Have him for there. That's all I had for NFL games, other than the NFC North. Anything else stick out to you this week?
Not really. I mean,
Yeah.
we're mostly concerned about the NFC North because our teams reside in that division. So I'll leave my comments for those.
Sure. That rolls us into it then. NFC North. We'll start out with the Vikings. They squeaked another one out this week against the Jets. There's a stats during the game. I can't remember the exact time, but the Vikings have only trailed in points at all this season. It was less than 5 minutes. I want to say it was like 3.5 minutes or something like that. So they've been winning almost the entire time they've been playing with a lead of whatever amount of points. Doesn't really matter. The last 2 weeks, though, I will say for them, have not looked nearly as commanding as their opening 3 weeks did. The last 2 weeks have been close. They've almost pissed those games away both times. Sam Darnold did not look good this game at all. You can say it's the Jets defense maybe, but they haven't looked that great this year. But he only threw for 179 yards, no touchdowns, and he threw one pick and he fumbled it once. Luckily for them, Aaron Rodgers played just as bad on the other side. I mean, he hit a lot of yards. They were throwing the ball a ton because they couldn't run it, but he threw 2 picks in the first quarter. One was a pick six, and then he threw a game-ending one at the end of the game, which that one, I don't know if it was his fault. Dude just never turned around to see the ball. Yeah, the Vikings, they're still getting wins. They're 5-0. I kind of said what I can say about them. They aren't winning as commandingly, but they're still winning.
I'm going to double down a little bit on what I said last week. Obviously, they have a pretty good shot at making the playoffs, but I did find a statistic that was very funny. The
I think I've
Vikings,
got it on my phone.
the
Go
5-0
ahead.
one.
Yep.
So the Vikings have been 5-0, I think, twice in the 2010s decade before
Yeah.
this year, and they've missed the playoffs both times.
I
And
think it was 2003 and 2015
oh,
or
was it
something.
2003? I thought it was
Well,
both
since
in the 2010s.
2000, but
But
yeah.
yeah, okay. There was in the most recent 5-0 team to not make the playoffs was that 2013 Vikings team.
Yep.
So I kind of have history on my side a little bit here. Obviously, these are not the same teams at all, but it does kind of coincide with the Vikings' poor luck that they've always had. They've always seemed to be successful in the regular season. I mean, look at they were like what 15-1 that year with Randy Moss when they were going to go to the playoffs in the 90s, and Morton, who never missed a whole field goal the whole entire year. The field goal to decide if they make it to the Super Bowl and he misses. They just have some bad luck, but that was then. This is now. Darnold, 2 weeks in a row, has struggled. And you could see, even when he had a clean pocket in this game, he was missing throws. He was not delivering on time. Yes, the Jets have an incredible secondary. They were mauling Jefferson, who was still playing pretty well, but like they were giving Jefferson a lot of problems. They were giving everyone else on that team pass catchers or just locking him down. But these are the type of games that you want your quarterback to step up in. Like, yeah, the Jets are a good defense, but this is the type of defense you're going to have to play against in the playoffs. If you can't form, you're going to struggle. You're not going to win these games. And they're lucky enough that Rodgers had 3 picks. And if Rodgers didn't start the game off as cold as he did, I don't know if the Vikings even win this. Once he got in the rhythm, yeah, he threw some picks. That last pick, that was just him trying to make a play. And Wilson didn't turn around. They were not on the same page. But you could see, like, leading up to that, Rodgers was starting to click and he was starting to get plays in that were gaining, they were only gaining like 8 yards at a time, but I think that's kind of how you have to play against the Flores defense is you have to kind of just nickel and dime them. They're kind of like a bend, don't break approach. You can't take and beat them deep. And Rodgers was dealing for a while until the end. And if they don't have Darnold playing better than this and they don't have a running game, they're not going to be a threat for the playoffs, like in the sense that, like, if they even make the playoffs, I wouldn't be worried. They might be like the Eagles were a couple years ago where they made the playoffs. Everyone's like, okay, whatever. They're a good record, made the playoffs, but they were starting to show signs of weakness and teams could take advantage of. And I think that's the same thing for the Vikings. They basically have to rely on their defense and Justin Jefferson every game. And if one of those two things breaks, they are going to lose. And I expect them to lose a couple games in the next few weeks, starting with the Lions, obviously being a homer, but I don't know how they beat the Lions because the Lions are going to have an offensive line that I think can match the Vikings defense. And that's going to be the one thing that I'm going to be really interested in seeing because they do a lot of disguised pressures and they will drop defensive ends into coverage, blitz linebackers, and they mix it all up and it makes it kind of hard. But when you play against good offensive line, does that stuff continue to work? I'm not sure.
See what happens. Yeah, I mean, currently it looks like your bold prediction about the Vikings is more likely than mine because Darnold did not look good this week. Did not look like an MVP at all. Granted, every MVP probably ever has had a bad week in there somewhere, so I won't unchalk it yet. But with those, with that stat of they've done it twice already, started off 5-0, missed the playoffs, and with the way the last 2 games ended, it's looked a little shaky, a lot more shaky than it had been, anyways. Yeah, so next up on the NFC North, we got the Packers. They got their turn beating up the Rams this week. Took care of business in LA. Wasn't the most pretty win of all time, but that's 3 of the teams in the division have now beaten the Rams. And if the Vikings beat them after their bye, that's a clean sweep for the NFC North. The NFC North looks great so far. Actually, I think they're the best record overall in all of football of all the divisions.
They're only a division with everyone with a winning record, so I'd imagine they have the best record across team versus team.
Yeah, that's kind of wild. Sucks if you're a fan of a team in this division. It's tough competition. But so Jordan Love, he threw for 224 and 2 touchdowns, and with one crazy behind the back pass interception. It was wild. We texted about it when it happened. It was a bad throw. I don't know what to say. It would have been cool if they made it, and it was possible they could have caught it if he would have kept running, but he stopped. I mean, it was a throw up. It was a prayer throw, but if that would have got caught, that would have been, like I said, an all-time highlight. I wish the dude wouldn't have stopped running.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying not to sound like I'm just a homer and just like hating on the other teams in the division, but I would start being worried about Jordan Love. I felt like this game had a lot of moments, and I didn't even know that was the pass you were talking about at the time. I actually didn't even see that play when I was talking. I think my stream
Oh,
was behind, and I watched the behind the line or behind the receiver pass where he threw behind himself, so it's a fumble. And the ball rolled out the
oh,
back for like a 13-yard loss. I thought that's what you were talking about. Like he tried to hit that. I'm like, even if you hit that guy, that guy's getting hit behind the line of scrimmage and tackled. Like that is literally just putting the ball at risk for no reason. Jordan Love is one of the most reckless quarterbacks we have in the league today. Maybe the most reckless. He's got a very Favre-esque way of playing. And there's a lot of passes even this game that ended up being good that are still like 50-50 balls where like, I don't know, better secondary maybe doesn't throw it. But like if you don't, I just see these things going poorly. He had it last year too, where even when he went on his like 6-game streak, he was throwing those 50-50 balls, maybe even less than 50-50 and getting away with it. When he's not getting away with those passes, like he looks rough. And this is one of those games, like, yeah, he had 224 yards, 2 touchdowns at the end, and like he kind of saved his day. But the Kraft touchdown, that 60-yard touchdown, I could have thrown that blindfolded. There was no one around that guy for 20 yards. So like that was just LaFleur with a great play call, right? That has nothing to do
hmm
with the quarterback. That's just a great play call. That's where that play was designed to go from day one. That was just LaFleur. Check it out for LaFleur. You can't give the quarterback too much credit for that other than that he made the throw. And I would be kind of worried. Maybe he's just going to start cold every year and then turn it on at the end of the year. And if he does that, I will completely change my tune on him. That just he starts slow. But I right now
I'm
you have 3 games this year and he's looked rough in all of them.
I'm not too concerned. The receivers need to start catching the ball. That's one of they have the highest drop rate in the NFL right now. Wicks drops everything they throw to him. I don't know what that dude's problem is this year. He gets open. He's so good at getting open, but he just drops the ball. It drives me wild. If he can figure that out, we'll be good. But yeah, I think it's 11% is the drop rate for the Packers, which is it's 1 on 10 throws. You hit the dude and he fucking drops it. And several of those will wind up in picks because they don't just drop it; they fucking pop it in the air and the other team gets it. So
Yeah,
it makes
there's
it
been
look
some of
worse
that.
than it is.
I'll be curious to see how it ends up. I mean, you can see the talent. I'm not trying to hate on the talent. Like he's one of the top 5 most talented quarterbacks in the league. I think just arm and athletic enough. He's got everything you want. So if he puts it all together like he did for the 6 games last year, I mean, he's scary good. So we'll see.
Yeah, and any great quarterback has a great coach too. So it's not like any of the MVPs. You look back, like who was their coach? It's almost always like a all-star, Hall of Fame kind of coach. They go hand in hand together. That's how you thrive. You can't just be super talented without a good coaching staff, or you're still gonna look poor.
Oh yeah. I mean,
Kind
it
of the
does go
nature of
hand
the
in hand.
game. That's it for the Packers. Up next, we got the Bears and Caleb Williams. They actually looked good this week. First game of the year where I say all around the team looked good. The running game was good. The passing game was good. They were playing against the Panthers, who seemed to have returned to their bottom of the league form this week. I thought it was funny to watch the team that traded away so much to the Bears just 2 years ago have the Bears come into town and just kind of spank them to the ground. It was
With
ironic.
2 of the players they got from that trade,
Yep.
Caleb Williams, DJ Moore, they kind of they wrecked the game.
hmm Yeah, it was their show. DJ Moore went back home and made him regret trading him away.
I'm actually going to double down on what I was talking about earlier. I think on our first podcast, the Bears to me are the scariest team to the Lions maybe this year and moving forward. I think if Caleb Williams puts it together, there's so much talent on that offense that they could be really good. Like they just need that offensive line to click a little bit and gel a bit, and they just need Caleb Williams to be able to settle down. I mean, if you saw that one pass down the seam to DJ Moore, that's Aaron Rodgers esque type throw. You know, it was just a little flick, 50 yards. He didn't put anything on that, and that pass was just there. He
hmm
has the Matthew Stafford, Pat Mahomes, or you say arm. He's got that same type of arm. He can throw on all angles. He is, my opinion, one of the best prospects I've ever seen from the quarterback position. So I'm really nervous that the Bears, if they don't ruin him, he is going to be really good. With that said, he does have some warts in his game that will hinder him for a while. So he needs to get over those for first. Like he holds on the ball too long, kind of like Aaron Rodgers back in the day. He tries too hard to make plays down the field, and it costs them. So if he can get to be a little bit more consistent play to play, they're going to be scary because they might not be the best defense in the division. I think the Vikings are, but they're like the best all around division or defense. Like they have a playmaking defense, plus I think they can shut you down. Where I think the Packers are more of like that playmaking defense. The Vikings are just, we're going to shut you down. You're going to score like no points, and we're going to keep you out of the end zone. The Bears can do both those things. So that's why the Bears scare me. I think they just have so much talent that in a year or two, if Caleb Williams clicks, watch out. They're going to, I could even, wouldn't be surprised that they're like a Super Bowl contender next year with enough good picks and Caleb Williams proving he is what he is.
I would be surprised. I still don't have faith. They've had the easiest schedule in the NFL. They beat the Panthers. I'm not writing too much into that. I want to see them start beating some good teams. I want to see them look good against some good teams. Because I mean, have they even played a good team yet this year?
No, I don't think they really have. But the nice thing is, I think they have the hardest remaining schedule in the NFL. So that easy schedule is because they haven't played the hard teams yet. Because they have to play the Vikings in Lions twice still, and that right there brings your win percentage up quite a bit. So yeah, I think we'll see if they're like a 500 team though, and Caleb Williams is clicking at the end of the year, and they can squeak into the playoffs though. I'm worried about them a little bit.
We'll see. I'm not worrying yet about that one. Oh yeah, and last we had the Lions. They were not able to secure a win this week, so they sit at 3 wins alongside the last place Packers and Bears, and the Vikings stay atop at 5-0.
Well, they're still ahead of the Packers and Bears. Let's not get that wrong. I know you're pretty happy to say that, but they're 3-1. They're a half game ahead. The Packers and Bears are still behind, and then they will be tied with the Vikings, or they'll be a half game behind the Vikings after they beat them next week.
Yeah, I chose my words as I wanted to choose them.
I mean, that was a bad week for us. Obviously, everyone getting a win, so it kind of sucks seeing every team win. But again, I'm not worried about the Vikings the way they beat the Jets. The Packers, if Jordan Love can put together, the defense scares me with Jordan Love playing well. And then the Bears are kind of like the same thing. Like the Packers and Bears are kind of similar, where it's just like the quarterbacks, if they click, they're going to be scary teams. But we're still writing that story.
Are the Vikings on bye this week?
Yeah, they're on bye this week. Oh yeah, they play us not next week, the week after.
Yeah. Yeah, either way. Yeah, that's the division. Nothing much changed. It's going to be a tight one this year. Pretty neck and neck. See if
best
the
division can in football, and all these teams are pretty young too. I think the Vikings are probably the oldest. Their defense, but they got younger on defense this year too. So I think all these teams could be competitive for the next couple of years with their rosters. And weren't the Packers like the youngest team last year? The Lions,
they were the youngest team to win a playoff game.
Okay.
Yeah, in history, I believe.
And I think 2 years before that, the Lions were the youngest team in the NFL, and now they're one of the best teams, and they're still very young. So the Bears, they're pretty young. They have some older players here and there, but their nucleus is very young. The Vikings, their nucleus is like kind of mid-age. So they're the oldest team in the division. They might fall off sooner, but again, all these teams are going to be competitive this year, and maybe some of the best teams in the league, making them the best division, in my opinion. And then, next year and the year after, they're still going to probably be one of the best teams or one of the best divisions in the league. So we're going to have some good football in the North for a while.
Yeah, I'm curious if 2 teams from this division make it to the playoffs this year.
I think there could be 3.
3 could. Yeah.
If there's any division with 3, I don't think it's going to be the NFC South.
That's never been done before, has it? There's no way.
Oh, yeah. It's happened many times.
3 teams from the same division?
Oh, really? It happens all the time.
Okay.
Yeah. It's even easier now because you have 3 teams that can make it that are not division leaders. It used to be only 2.
That was only like 4 years ago, wasn't it? That's pretty recent.
Pretty recent, but that's happened way back in the day. There's been even the 90s, I think the Vikings, Lions, and Packers have all made the division or playoffs before. So it's rare, but it happens. I would not be surprised now with 3 playoff teams that are not division leaders that we'll see 3 teams from this division.
Possible to do 4 now, I guess, but
I mean, just look at it. You have the NFC South, the Falcons, Saints, Panthers, Bucks. They might have 2 teams. The NFC East, they're all struggling. So you got the Commanders and the Eagles and the Cowboys. I mean, I guess every division has like 3 teams, I think, but I think the North is still the best.
So far, that's what the stats say. That's all I got for the division. We'll roll into the fab spending of the week. The big spend this week was Xavier Legette, wide receiver for the Panthers. He went for $26 a TIFF after his big breakout game last week, which last week was week 4 as of recording. He proceeded to do nothing this last week 5. So that's a bummer. The next highest bid was Ashley for 13. I gave it a thumbs down. I think it was a lot to pay for one good week from a guy who really has no track record of doing anything. For a team who also has really no track record of doing anything. I didn't like it.
I feel the same. I would have, if I wanted Leggett, I probably would have bid like a couple bucks. That's it. 26 seems like a lot for a receiver on a bad offense. Maybe the worst team in the league. He had one good week, but there was a lot of, you could put thoughts together that show that, that was maybe an outlier week. And then the fact that they were going against the Bears, it could just be because the Bears defense is really good and he does start to put, some games together after this week, but I would be concerned. He almost seems like someone you just picked up, you could drop. So $26 for a guy you picked up to see if he was going to do something is a lot. $26, you want to know that guy's going to be a multi-week starter for you.
Or at least have some strong convictions of it. But
right.
I couldn't see that with Leggett, but maybe Tiff could. And she had a decent chunk of money still, so you got to spend it. No point just sitting on it. Next up, we had Justice Hill, Ravens running back. He went to $17 to Ashley. The next highest bid was 2 by you. Kind of like the last one. I feel like you're kind of just paying for the blow-up game in week 4. But on this one, he is the pass catcher on the team. Derrick Henry, that's not really his forte. So if you get some games where it goes more pass heavy, he could get use. So if you see those kind of matchups, I could see putting him in your lineup. So I gave this one no thumbs. I didn't like it or hate it.
I think for the price, I would say no thumbs or thumbs down, but I don't mind the player. I don't mind the, picking him up. You do have the game script that you're talking about, and he didn't really perform in it, so that's a concern. Like, that was a passing game, and he didn't really perform. The thing about him, though, is he might be an injury away from being a top 15, top 12 running back. He's looked good. He is clearly the number 2 behind Henry, and he does have pass catching upside, and he is being used at times. So he does have, flex spot. He can be potentially started started in a flex from week to week, especially when you're running into buys, because he's probably still going to get you like 7 to 8 points, even on weeks he doesn't, perform that great. And then again, he still has an upside with Henry going down, being a very, very valuable player. So $17, maybe a bit high, but I like the player.
That's a good point. I didn't really factor that in, but he does seem like a obvious next guy up if Henry goes down. And those are worth having on a roster. $17 for that guy, maybe, but that's not always a clear-cut situation. If this guy goes down, who's up next? And it looks like it's obvious there.
Right. And he's been there for a while and hasn't been the next guy up, so that does concern you a little bit. But they did just give him a contract. I think he got like 2 years, like 10 million or something. So they paid him decent money. They expect him to be a valuable player on their team. So you can be a little more comfortable when teams are actually paying the player. You think they're going to use him, but they're going to pay him.
Yeah, and I'm sure there is another running back there, but I don't know who it is. Like, I don't know if he's had any production at all, so it seems like that's the guy they'd prefer to go to.
I think there's like some kind of rookie, but I don't know who it is.
Yeah. So on to the next one, we had Justin Fields, quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He went to $13 to Poor Boy. Next highest bid was $6 by you again. So you got outbid on 2 guys this week, but it's not like you threw a lot of money at him, so I don't know if you were expecting to get either one of them. Kind of follows the trend of the last 2 ones. Picked him up after a big blow-up game. He actually did okay this week, but for me, not a huge fan of Fields. It seems like the Steelers don't want him running like he did in Chicago. The game ran a lot of points. That's kind of what he got. I mean, he ran 2 touchdowns that week because we had a good game. But it seems like they don't want him doing that because he hasn't done much of it this year, and I don't think he's that great of a passer. I gave it a thumbs down.
$13 is a lot. Even $6 is a lot. I did not think I was going to get him at $6. I didn't really know what to do this week. I had so many players on buy that I was throwing out more bids than normal.
Needed a quarterback, yeah.
Yeah, I thought maybe Fields could be a high upside play. And I was thinking like either I get Fields or I get Cousins. And I didn't get Cousins because I somehow messed up my bid. I put a $0 bid on Cousins because my goal was, okay, gonna have a bad week, but I have 2 pass catchers on the Falcons. So I'm like, if Cousins has a good game, then both my pass catchers do. And obviously, I didn't get him. He had a good game, so a little disappointed in that. I don't know what I did wrong there. But the Fields thing at first was like, okay, maybe he could be your 20, 25-point guy for a week and maybe be the difference in winning a week. And I just needed some high upside players. Justin Fields has high upside, but obviously his floor is just, for a starter, probably the lowest at quarterback. He's just not a very good player. The Steelers are afraid to use him running because if you're running, typically it means you're in a passing situation, and I don't think they want Justin Fields passing that much. And the pass plays they do run for him are going to be close to the line of scrimmage, so it limits his running ability because they're not going to go down the field. They're not going to spread out the middle of the field for him to give him the running lanes. So that's why you're not seeing him run as much. They're playing a very basic, simple offense for him, and they're not letting him stretch the field at all. So yeah, he's another guy you could probably drop after this week, and then in a week from now, 2 weeks from now, it looks like Russell Wilson will be the starter. So he's a guy you're not going to have for more than a couple weeks. So $13 is pretty high for someone like him. Even $6 would have been probably pretty high for someone that I might only get a week out of.
Well, it worked out for you. You wound up with a good quarterback for the week, anyways. I didn't put him in here because I don't even know what you spent on him. Might have been $0. My cutoff's usually like $5 or less. I don't even look at them.
Yeah, I put him at $0. I was actually going to pick up Cousins again, but then when I looked at Cousins, because I was like, oh, I didn't get Cousins. What the heck? So I looked at Cousins, and you can't pick him up because after Wednesday waivers go, you can't pick up Thursday.
Well, we do them on Thursday. So if you didn't get them on Thursday, then the game happens Thursday night. Then it's too late. Yeah.
Yeah, when I looked at it, I'm like, oh, I have Cousins. I looked at my team and I have Cousins. So I'm like, oh, I'll go get him now. And I'm like, oh, shoot. The waivers are for next Wednesday or something.
Next one's okay. It goes Thursday, Saturday, Sunday. Those are the 3 times you can do it. So if you don't get the guy for Thursday night on Thursday, you're not getting him that week because then he's locked.
But yeah, it worked out for me anyway.
Yeah. But yeah, I didn't put that one down, but it'll come up in the matchup recaps. So next section is a new section. We're going to go over our first round busts. That's what I'm going to call it. They're not all busts, but we're just going to kind of take a look back at the draft board. And I'm going to go down from first pick to the 12th pick, so just the first round. We're going to look at the players and see if we think they are busts. So the first one's obvious. It was Christian McCaffrey. I got to put it down as a bust. Even if he comes back immediately after IR, he's missed half the season, half the fantasy season anyways. You got to call that a bust for the first overall. Nothing. I'm not saying any of these players are bad or untalented or whatever. I'm just saying for fantasy, it's a bust.
I mean, it's the worst pick you can make, right? You use your first overall pick, and the guy doesn't play a single snap. That's rough. I saw something, I think it was last week, and they're showing like statistically what the best pick was of all time. And the number 1 overall pick is the worst pick you could ever get in fantasy, which is funny because that is the most coveted pick. Everyone's like, oh, I'm going to get Christian McCaffrey. There's just a curse with it, though. There's always like Le'Veon Bell, the holdout, things like that. Christian McCaffrey's now been the first overall pick twice and has ended the season on the IR the first time. And this one, he started on the IR, and we're talking about he might not be back till week 11 now. It originally was like, oh, he might come back in the next couple of weeks, and now they're like, yeah, no, that's not going to happen. We're probably thinking about week 11. So Christian McCaffrey has been a complete disaster. I feel bad for anyone who got that pick because every single person with the first overall pick is taking Christian McCaffrey if they were trying. I feel like if you were doing anything else to be contrarian, you knew you were hurting yourself taking CeeDee Lamb or Tyreek Hill. Sure, could they have been better? Maybe. But Christian McCaffrey is the best fantasy player we've had over the last 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's off the top of my head. I believe Jonathan Taylor was number 1 at one point. That was a season he went on the IR, missed it all.
Yep.
I can't think of his name, but he was a real badass for one season on the Rams.
Todd Gurley?
Todd Gurley. He was number 1 year. Same thing.
David Johnson was number 1.
David Johnson, yep.
Yeah, it's crazy how and it's not just like, oh, it's just one-hit wonders. It's like Christian McCaffrey. The guy's been great his whole career, but he gets injured all the time. It's just like whenever they're number 1 overall pick, they get injured. Le'Veon Bell's been up there before.
If they're the 5th overall pick, then they can stay healthy, have a good season. But when they get that number 1, like consensus number 1, yeah, I don't know why. It's cursed.
It is.
So if you get the first overall pick, don't pick what the consensus says, I guess. I don't know what else to say about it. The number 2 pick in our draft was Tyreek Hill. I'm calling this one a bust too. Again, I'm not saying these players aren't talented, but without Tua there, they don't seem to know how to utilize them. he's looked bad outside of week 1. Not much else to say. Calling it another big bust.
Well, I'll point out something later on when we talk about another player on this list. But I mean, Tyreek Hill, you would hope would be quarterback proof, and you always
Mm-hmm.
talk about who the best players are at a position. This proves right here he's not one of the best players at his position. He is one of the most dynamic players in the league, but he still needs a quarterback to get him the ball. Some players can overcome those situations. Tyreek Hill was not able to. He's going to probably come back and be a tear by the end of the year when Tua comes around. But as of right now, he could have tanked your season. I think, fortunately for Scooter in our league, he's had a pretty good team despite Hill. So he's
Mm-hmm.
stayed pretty competitive, and he'll reap the benefits of Hill coming back later in the season. But yeah, it's a bad pick. He probably costs a lot of people their league.
Yeah, I think I know where you're going with that next one, but we'll get to him. The next one was Brees Hall was picked 3rd overall. Brees Hall's last 2 weeks combined for 8 total fantasy points. The season started okay, but the last 2 weeks the Jets cannot run the ball at all. They just have 0 production on the ground, no touchdowns on the ground. The 3rd overall pick, it's looking like a bust.
So I have a hard time with this one because Brees Hall's really, really good. And he was looking like the player you were expecting in the first couple weeks. I do believe this is a little bit of a knee jerk reaction. They played against 2 good defenses in Denver and Minnesota, maybe the 2 best defenses in the league. They also have a very bad offensive line. So when things go wrong, they're going to go really wrong for him. I think he's just a little bit more Jackal and Hyde, a little more boom and bust than we expected. And he's always been a kind of a boom and bust player. I just think that's more amplified now because of the lack of a good offensive line and the fact that he just played against 2 good defenses. If I was in a position, I would probably be buying Brees Hall. I think it would suck to have him. Like they always do, like buy, sell, or hold. I would be
Sure.
holding or buying Hall at this point because I feel like there is players that are like, I don't want anything to do with him now, and I would buy him after his 2 down games. So bust as of right now, I would say I'm more lukewarm on it. I wouldn't call it a bust or a success, but I think he's going to turn around. I think he'll be a good pick by the end of the year.
I hope you're right, because that's my pick. And it sucks to see it. He was great last year with a worse O-line and a worse quarterback. I did not see this coming this year. I didn't see
I think the
games
Allen
like
thing's the
this.
bigger deal. Is like, how is he losing carries to Allen? That's concerning. But I think that's just because Allen's that good. Allen could be maybe even better than Hall. So
I
that hurts a lot.
like Braylon Allen. That does suck for Brees Hall, but he's not. I mean, his last 2 weeks too has less than 8 fantasy points. Like he's not. Nobody can get it moving on the ground. That's the biggest problem. Like if they're gonna split it 50-50, I think Hall's talented. He'll have some very good weeks. I don't even think they would split it 50-50 straight up, but yeah, whatever. We'll see. You're calling it maybe a bust, probably not a bust. I'm saying it's a bust currently. I didn't even bring up Braylon Allen in that one. Anyways, the next pick we had CeeDee Lamb. This one I'm putting on the verge of busting. I wouldn't say he's a bust yet, but it has not looked like what you expected for the second receiver off the board. He's currently 13th. He's the 13th scoring wide receiver in our fantasy scoring, and every single person above him in the rankings was drafted significantly later. So it's painful to have that draft capital return wide receiver 2 numbers when you're drafting him 4th overall.
I feel like there's certain players that get a boost because of the team they're on. I feel like the Cowboys are one of those teams. Obviously, where we are from, the Packer players get like a round boost. I've never quite understood Lamb as the like top receiver or a top 3 pick. I would have probably avoided him. I think he's probably more in the range you're seeing him, especially if that offense isn't as good as we expected it was going to be, and it hasn't been. I think he's more of like a back end of the first round type player. As far as taking him, what is this, fourth overall? Obviously, that's kind of a bust at this point. But I can't say a guy drafted 4th overall, the 13th overall receiver, is a bust, especially when they were so early in the season. I think he's been a disappointment. I would imagine those numbers will improve a little bit by the end of the year, and he's probably sitting around 7, 8. Maybe he's in the top 3 by the end of the year. But he's in another situation where kind of like Jets, where you were expecting a better situation and it wasn't what you expected. And the Cowboys look like a complete disaster. I'm actually surprised we're not hearing more McCarthy fire rumors, to be honest, because that team has been way underperforming. They
But
had a
they've been
terrible
winning.
playoff loss,
That's,
but they're barely winning,
I
and
know, but it's
then
a win, so I think that's what the only thing silencing it.
yeah. But the way they're winning, the way their team looks right now, I'd be really concerned. I mean, if the Lions put a
Same.
beat on them this next week and they lose by like 30 points, which I think is very possible because they don't have either of their pass rushers, so they're already their weakness at stopping the run is going to be magnified. I would just be concerned about that. But obviously, that's not really what this is about. As of CD Lamb, I would say you're both right. You can't really say it's a bust. You can't really say it's a success. We'll just kind of stay lukewarm with it right now.
Yeah. I put the verge of busting. I think this one could be a bust, but I wouldn't call it that quite yet. I think when you drafted them, it seemed like they didn't have a running back. And you knew they didn't have a running back, so you thought the offense would funnel through CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb. You thought that would be like the main focus. In the games I've watched, it seems like it kind of is for like the first quarter or half, and then it's kind of that's the end of it.
Yeah, it's been a
It's
lot
very
of like
bizarre.
early quarter stuff that they've had success. My concern really, and we didn't touch on this yet, is there's been a lot of tape of Lamb just being pissed off on the sidelines and like
Hmm.
bitching out um the coaches, quarterback. To me, there's something else going on there. He's been pissed multiple times. So is he a diva? He never really seemed like one. So I'm not really sure what's all going on there. That might be something worth monitoring too, and that could be a concern.
We'll see how she shakes out. So our fifth pick in this year's draft was Bijan Robinson. Bijan is currently 21st in scoring at the running back position this year. I got to call this one a bust for a first round pick. That's back end running back 2 production. The Falcons seems like in the games where they're scoring a lot of points, they are pass first. And even when they are running, he's splitting carries with Algier pretty heavily. Like he does not have the vast majority of the workload like a lot of people thought he was going to. I think this guy's super talented, but he just doesn't seem to be the focus of the offense. So I'm calling it a bust.
He is so fun to watch. It's so frustrating to see him only be 21st overall in scoring because when I watch him on a play to play basis, I can't pick on my hand more running backs better than him in the NFL. Like you
Mm-hmm.
can just see it. It was like last week. I saw a pass blocking video. It was just highlights of him pass blocking, laying dudes out, and he's incredible at pass blocking. I was just like, okay, this is like Ezekiel Elliott reincarnated because that was Ezekiel Elliott's thing. Is he was just great at everything. He might not have been the best at any one particular thing, but he's great at everything. Bijan Robinson's that too. I don't really think they're a pass first offense. I think they did play against the Buccaneers in a certain way because the Buccaneers, you can't run on them. They just have a crazy stout defensive line, and their secondary is where they're susceptible. So I do think the Falcons tried to attack that a little bit. What I want to see is them get Bijan Robinson more in a receiver role. Use him more like Christian McCaffrey a little bit. He does have some chops as a receiver, and I think that's one of the places they can benefit with him. His downside is he's not good between the tackles, and I think that's why Tyler Algier gets as much playing time as he does. Because Tyler Algier might be a better in between the tackler runner. He's just not as good at everything else. And when they want to kind of like slow down games, they're going to go to Tyler Algier because that's what you do. And you want to run between the tackles, you want to grind out 4 or 5 yard runs, and that's where Tyler Algier is at his best. Robinson, not so much. And I think that's hurt. So game script hurt him early. I do think he's going to turn it around. I've been talking to my friend Chandler, who has him on his league, and he's been kind of debating on trading him. I kind of keep telling him you're probably trading him at his lowest value, so you're not getting what you probably should in return, and he'll probably be a top 10 back by the end of the year. It's concerning, but I would hold on him right now. I think he's a bust so far, but he will turn it around.
I agree he's talented. He should be higher, but I'm calling it what it is so far. It's looking like a bust. Maybe he can turn it around, but time will tell. The next pick we had, our 6th overall pick this year, was Amon-Ra St. Brown. His first week was awful, but he's been good ever since. This is the first clear cut, not bust to me. This is a good pick. If you picked him, you're happy.
He's the probably most consistent player in the league, honestly.
He gets so many targets.
He's not gonna beat you with crazy flashy plays. He just does his thing. He plays 10, 15 yards near the line of scrimmage. He doesn't go very deep, but he is one of the best route runners in the league in a short area. You can't beat him in a phone booth. He's just going to always get those easy catches. He's almost like an extension of the running game. That's why he's so valuable, because he's getting so many targets every week because they're not throwing to him deep. Yeah, he doesn't have his individual play with him isn't going to give you as many points as, let's say, CeeDee Lamb, who's more of a deep threat. But again, every week you're expecting probably between 10 and 20 points from Amon-Ra, and that's just all you can really ask for from a first rounder, I think, is just consistent, steady production to keep my team afloat. You don't need the big home run hits in the first round. You just need a steady player. Amon-Ra's that. He's been that for years.
Yeah, so 6th overall pick. First clear cut, we agree. This is not a bust. It was a good pick. 7th overall pick was Kyren Williams. He is 4th in scoring at the running back position this year. He looks great. Not a bust. Not much to say about the guy. He gets like 100 yards and a touchdown every week.
I was really wrong on him, and I'm disappointed because I loved him last year and didn't really like him much this year. But I was really worried about Corum. I was worried about the comments about him being a kick returner in the beginning of the year. Clearly wasn't, so that was just kind of smoke up everyone's ass. He's been great. For a small guy, he's an incredible goal line running back. He's incredible in short yardage situations. Like, Bijan Robinson could learn a lot from Kyren Williams in like the short yardage game and the in between the tackles. For a guy his size, I don't know how he does it. I feel like he's going to get injured every week because of how small he is and the load he takes on, but he hasn't yet, and he's been great. So keep riding him. Hopefully he doesn't get injured, and he'll be probably a top 5 running back from here on out, because especially with how beat up they are in the receiving game, they have to rely on him more than they probably expected early in the year.
Yeah, there's a lot of concern about him this year, because last year he was, one of the few bell cow running backs. He was getting 75% of the workload, and they brought, like you said, Blake Corum in. That was a big concern, and the kicking thing was a concern. Like, they want to take it easier on Kyren this year, but they went right back to where they left off last year.
Nothing's changed. Same exact position, doing the same exact thing, and it's fun to watch. I watched him in the Packer game. He's a fun player to watch. He's a great player.
That brings us to the number 8 overall pick, which was Justin Jefferson. He is at 3rd for the wide receiver position in our scoring. He looks unstoppable. His worst game of the year, I think, was just this last week, where he had 92 yards and no touchdown. If that's your worst week, you're pretty happy with your pick. Not a bust, most definitely.
I kind of hinted towards it earlier when we were talking about Tyreek Hill. There's certain players
this is who it was.
Justin Jefferson, in my opinion, and it's been for a couple of years, is the best player in the NFL. So some players, like Hill, he runs a lot of posts. He beats you with kind of like, 75 to like 60% of the route tree. DK Metcalf, he beats you with like 50% of the route tree, right? Like, you can look at a route tree, you can see like, go this way, you go this way, you go this way, you got curls, like every one of these players you look at, they all beat you in certain ways. So like, if you're looking at Amon-Ra, you can put a line here and take all the top stuff off, and all these like smaller routes, that's where he wins. Tyreek Hill, you probably take some of that small stuff and some of the over the top stuff, he wins all there. There is no weakness in Jefferson's game. He might not be the best at any one particular thing, but he is probably near the best at everything in the position. And I'm starting to think he's on the Jerry Rice. It's hard to say Kelvin Johnson and like Moss, because he doesn't really beat you the way those guys do. He's actually more well-rounded than they were. He is more on the Jerry Rice spectrum, like where he literally beats you at everything. And I think we need to start considering him in that conversation, because he's putting up stats like he's one of those guys. He has no weakness. He's literally making Sam Darnold look like an MVP candidate at points. And I don't think Sam Darnold's even near that conversation without Jefferson. He's just incredible. When you watch him, he never loses. He seems like he wins his road every time. He played against Sauce Gardner, who's the best corner in the league, with another great safety in our corner on that team, and he still put up 92 yards. And you could argue that Darnold missed him on some other plays too. So yeah, you're never going to go wrong taking Jefferson in any fantasy draft as long as he stays healthy. He is going to be a mainstay for the next 10 years, in my opinion. And we're going to start talking about him as a Jerry Rice type contender. Probably won't beat Jerry Rice, but the fact he's in that conversation this early shows how good he is.
Yeah, looking back, it's wild that he was pick number 8. He was like pick 2 last year, 1 or 2. And
he was the guy I wanted. I was hoping he'd fall to me.
Quarterback. everyone was worried about the quarterback this year. Apparently, like you said earlier, he might be one of those quarterback-proof kind of guys. Next up, we got another wide receiver. This guy's actually number 1 at the position. After his last 2 weeks, because they were absolutely explosion games, it was Jamar Chase. His first 2 weeks were not great, but that was kind of rolling off that little holdout thing he was doing during the offseason, and he's looked fantastic ever since. Worth first-round pick, worth first overall pick with current performance. Not a bust. Not much to add.
I mean, I don't want to make it sound I'm just talking at my own team. I think Chase might be the best player in fantasy this year. After watching the Bengals constantly just let teams run over them, they're going to be in 40 to 40 games all year. I don't know how that defense can stop anybody. Joe Burrow looks incredible. And then that's just all going to add into Chase having a better year. He's going to get more targets because they're always going to be trying to catch up, or they're trying to stay ahead of a team that's, scoring 30 points a game. They're going to have to find a way to make points. They don't have a running game. They have 2 really good receivers, one of the best in the league, with one of the best quarterbacks in the league who've had chemistry since college. I think you're just going to keep seeing more and more of this. I really do think he's the number 1 player at his position, and I think he might end up being the number 1 player in fantasy.
Definitely possible. Number 10 overall pick, we had Jonathan Taylor. He is at 11th in scoring for running backs. That's after missing a week due to injury. He's not currently a bust, but if he misses 6 weeks with this ankle thing, he could fairly easily move to bust. It's the unfortunate situation of injuries. I don't know what his current timetable is. He might even play this week. I really didn't look into it. But it was a high ankle sprain, so it's usually like a 4 to 6 week kind of thing.
Yeah, and they said mild, so I think they're probably trying to say like, hey, this is gonna be on the lower end of that. And the fact that they didn't put him on IR, I'm assuming he's probably got like maybe 2 weeks he's gonna miss. But as we mentioned before, this year's been really weird where they're like, oh, this guy has no bad injury, and then they miss 6 games.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to put him as a bust. I'm going to still say this is a very successful pick. He's looked great when he's in the game. And sometimes minor injuries, I'm not going to knock a player for because every player deals with things like this throughout the season. Most players don't play the full year, especially in today's day and age where they try to take and be as cautious as possible and get people as much, time off as they can without really costing the team. So I think we're going to see Taylor out 1 more week, then he'll be back. And he was looking great. So I wouldn't be too worried about if I had him. Obviously, if you don't have a good backup, that could be different. But I think you can, keep the team afloat while you have them out. And then once you get them back, you're going to be right where you left off. And you're going to be really happy.
Yeah, agreed. 11th overall pick, we had Saquon Barkley. He is number 3rd at the position of running back, and he has already eaten his bye, which is pretty fantastic. So definitely worth a first-round pick. Another guy who might win worth first overall pick, not a bust. Not much to add.
I mean, at this point in the season, I think most people would say Saquon Barkley is the best player in fantasy at this point. So got a long season to go. He's been incredible so far. We're going to just be happy to watch it until he gets injured. I hope he doesn't get injured. He's kind of one of those guys, too, that's had a long history of it.
Yeah.
So I just want to keep watching him play. I think he's incredible. I've always loved his game. There's not many players his size that run 4.3 and can juke you at a moment's notice.
He's awesome to watch. The last one we had was A.J. Brown. He was number 12 overall pick. He had a great week 1, but he hasn't played since. They're going to be rolling off their bye this week. I actually don't know if he's expected to come back. I would hope so because it's currently looking like a bust to miss 3 out of the first 4 games, then have a bye. I'm kind of holding off on saying he's a bust, I guess, because if he comes back and he performs like you expect him to the rest of the season, he's worth the number 12 overall pick. Time will tell.
I heard that he's going to come back. So
okay.
I think that's pretty much like a set in stone thing that he'll be back. And I think that was always their timetable, was just let him take as much time off, get to the bye. That gives him a couple weeks, get right. Because they always said it wasn't that bad of an injury. I think these are some of these situations these teams are taking the early season and being like, there's no reason to risk this stuff. Because like a lot of times, like I don't know what his injury was, but we'll just say like a hamstring. You get a hamstring injury week 2 or 3, and then you play 2 weeks later on it. You re-aggravate it. it might be worse. You might be now 4 weeks. It's like now these teams are starting to understand. Just take an extra week or two. Don't rush it back, especially if your record isn't in a bad situation. Protect the player, protect your overall team success for the future, and just let these guys heal up. And I think that's what the Eagles did with Brown. 2 years ago, that might have been the case. He might be playing again, but then if he played again, he might have got re-injured, and then we're sitting here thinking, well, this was a bad pick. So I would be happy if I was an AJ Brown owner with the way the Eagles played this.
That wraps it up. Basically, the consensus or what the data suggests to. So what I'm looking at is if you picked in the first half, you're probably not happy with your pick right now. If you picked in the second half, you're probably pretty happy with your pick right now. Second half players seem to be doing good. First half of the first round, we're mostly busts so far.
Or just draft Justin Jefferson #1 overall every season. You'll be good.
Good. Switch the strategy to that. Well, you don't want him to be number one pick. You don't want him to be consensus #1. Something bad's going to happen.
Consensus #1. As long as everyone else is like, oh no, Sam Darnold, just take him anyway. He'll be the best. Even though I think Chase will be better this year, I think Jefferson is the better player.
Situation matters. That's
exactly
the nature of fantasy. And yeah, if you have a bad defense, it's better for fantasy.
Yep.
Mainly if you're a receiver. If you're running back, sometimes that hurts because you just can't get the production in the second half.
Well, if you're a receiving running back, it's really valuable because then
if you're that kind of running back, yeah.
So it can help, but yeah, most of the time running backs they take a little bit of a hit.
You all know the drill by now. We ran a little bit long again, so I'm splitting it into two. Thanks for listening and tune in for the second half. Bye now.